Welcome everyone to Jaden's Jam. I'm your host, Jaden Goss, and today we're talking about Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Episode 8, Alloyed. So here we are, we're at the season finale. Now, overall, my thoughts on this show have been a little mixed. I have enjoyed some of the events that have taken place, but overall, I've been a little disappointed, to say the least. I loved episode 6. That's really the only episode this season that I loved. Last week, episode 7, I thought was a bit of a step back. And this episode, this season finale, I should say, I liked. There were several moments that I really enjoyed, but overall, it does leave me a little disappointed. And I was a little surprised that they went immediately into the reveal, but I was like, okay, this is a change of pace because so far, one of my problems with this show is that it's all over the place pacing wise. Some episodes are paced pretty well, but overall, this whole season has been all over the place. I feel like we move a step forward, but then we'll take two steps back in the next scene. Sometimes we'll spend way too much time in one scene. That's something I hope that the second season can do a little better is pacing, number one. But that means not spending so much time in scenes where you've already made your point, where you stick around for 2 minutes and you're basically just wasting time at this point. One thing I think the second season could do is make it a little tighter. The editing can be a little better. I'm not a professional critic by any means, but as a layman, like I can see that the editing needs to be better for the next season. But I guess we could start off with the stranger. So we finally got the reveal that the stranger is, well, a wizard. We don't know his name. We don't know who he is still, but at least we know that he is a wizard, which is what I think most people had guessed. The episode starts off with a complete misdirect where you have the three people, I don't even know what they're called. Um, they they call the stranger Lord Sauron. So I was like, at first I was like, oh, okay, so we're getting right into this. Like, they're not gonna save, they're not gonna waste time with this. They're they're gonna. He is Sauron, and at first I was buying it. I was like, okay, this makes sense. I mean, he's one of the people who could have been Sauron. I never really thought he was going to be Sauron, but when this reveal happened, I was like, okay, so he is Sauron. So how are we gonna do this? Because he then spends the next scenes being a little like he spends this whole season just being confused. It's nice that by the end of this episode we got some clarity and he was actually speaking in sentences. He was actually he had stuff to say finally. And it makes sense for him to be a wizard and not Sauron. So I liked that reveal. I just when it comes to the Harfoots, I just I will say this. When Nori is saying goodbye to everyone, I did feel that. So I guess it is working emotionally, but it's kind of like, can we get something going? I mean, we finally had this cult pop up in the past few episodes, which has made it a little bit more exciting. But overall, the Harfoot storyline is probably the weakest one of this show. And I feel like they wasted so much time with, like, not revealing the stranger a little bit sooner. This is one of those examples where they could have done this a little bit earlier and done more stuff with the Harfoots, like the whole Nori and the stranger having to go to this place. I feel like we kind of we I don't know. I the Harfoots is the one storyline where I just don't care about. So I guess we're going on a journey with him and Nori to Rune, I think was the name of the place. And that's where we'll figure out, I guess, who he actually is, even though he's not Sauron. So I wonder if we're going to get some. I wonder if the Harfoot storyline is now going to meet up with whatever Halbrand Sauron is doing. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. And speaking of Halbrand, we got the reveal that he is Sauron. So all the people who were saying he was Sauron the whole time, you guys are right. I had watched a video a few weeks ago. In Deep Geek had done a like 12-minute analysis. Maybe it was 20 minutes. It was analysis of why Halbrand is Sauron. You know, he had a lot of the character traits that Sauron had in the books, because again they had laid the groundwork that Halbrand meets a lot of the requirements that he would be Sauron. You know, he's a good smith, he's a good warrior, he's very charismatic. Obviously, he's able to talk people into doing things. So I kind of had an idea, more of an idea that he could be Sauron. So this whole time, I've been going back and forth. You know, I really didn't want Sauron. I really didn't want Halbrand to be Sauron because I liked the character, especially by the end of this season. So I was a little conflicted. And he is Sauron. So everybody who was saying that he was Sauron the whole time, you guys are right. He turned out to be Sauron. Which, by the way, one more thing I wanted to say. I loved the moment when he's talking to Celebrimbor, and I knew he was Sauron when he said something about it's a gift, because I haven't read the books, but I did know immediately when they did the gift thing. Okay, that's Sauron, because apparently in the books, Sauron had gone to Celebrimbor and helped him create the rings as Anatar, I think is his name. So yeah, that was a nice touch. I knew it immediately then. And can I just say, he does have a lot of chemistry with Galadriel, who is the main protagonist of this show. So it's good that they were able to build some chemistry between the two actors, and they're going to have a lot of great face-offs, I'm assuming, going forward. You know, I loved when it was revealed and he's telling her, "Yeah, you saved me. I wanted to stay in Numenor, but you wanted me to come to Middle Earth." Like he spent the whole time like gaslighting her, and it was great. Like just that scene with him and her. You know, he's giving her these visions. I guess he's messing with her head so that he can escape. I'm assuming. Um, those were really cool scenes, and I actually really loved near the end of their confrontation in her head or whatever, however that worked. Uh, when you see like his face get darker and his eyes get darker, and I think he had like a little bit of red. I just finished watching the episode, and these episodes are long as fuck, so I might be wrong, misremembering stuff. So I apologize if I am. But I love that scene when they're both yelling at each other, and you see like her face gets darkened too when she starts to when she starts to get more rage and hate in her. You can see that she changes her face a bit, and I like that juxtaposition. You know, because the same thing happened to Halbrand or Sauron, when he's yelling in her face, and I just thought the performance in those scenes was really good. And we did get a lot of. We have, by the end of this show, I will say, we did get more range from the actress who is playing uh, Galadriel. And so hopefully we get more range from her. I also liked the idea that she had to sacrifice the last thing of her brother that she had in order to create these rings of power, which we finally got the rings of power at the end of the episode. Can I just say, just nitpicky thing, didn't like the way they were designed. I just didn't like the way they looked. I don't know if that's how they're supposed to look. I don't know if that was an Amazon. I don't know if Peter Jackson's versions of the Rings of Power are more close to the book description. But I will say, and maybe this is, maybe I'm a moron, but I really love the way the rings are designed in um, Peter Jackson's trilogy. And these were just gaudy and kind of ugly. But I like the symbol of it is that here they are, the Rings of Power, the thing that this show is named after. They finally happened, but it was at the very end. And let me just talk about that scene real quick. So the scene when the Rings of Power are created, this is an example of, for me, the pacing of this show. So they look at the Rings of Power like 3 or 4 times, and they're going back and forth between Celebrimbor, Galadriel, and Elrond, all looking at the rings. Now, I get that this is a huge moment. These are very powerful artifacts. This is part of the reason. I mean, Lord of the Rings. That's what that's what the name of the series is Lord of the Rings. Um, so I get that they are very important. They're It's a big thing happening here. But this is an example of nobody's saying anything. They're just looking at the rings, and it keeps going back and forth between the rings and all the people there looking at it. That's an example of something that you didn't need to keep going back and forth between everybody looking at the rings and the rings looking at them or whatever. I just it's probably a nitpicky thing, but again, I'm that's one example of something that happened in this episode where I'm like, okay, you could have edited this scene a little bit shorter and just done it once or twice. But instead, you do it 3 or 4 times so that you can show everybody's reaction and nobody is saying anything but staring at them. But yes, I did like the idea that Galadriel would have to sacrifice basically the one thing she had left from her brother to make the rings. That was a cool thing. It was a nice sentiment. Like, and Celebrimbor even says you will have to make a sacrifice to make this happen. And I knew immediately he was talking about her dagger. And that was cool. That was a nice moment. I liked it. It worked really well. And I'm actually really excited. I love the ending of the episode. We end with Sauron going into Mordor. So I guess he's going to dispatch, what's his name? Adar. So that'll be cool to see their confrontation now that he's been revealed to be Sauron. I'm assuming he's not going to hide himself anymore to anybody else. And that'll be a cool confrontation to see, because he was ready to kill Adar in episode 6. And I'm assuming it's not going to be any different when he's revealed to be actually Sauron. And looking back at episode 6, well, Adar tried to kill Sauron. He even said he stuck a knife, he stuck an axe in his belly or something, whatever. And Halbrand even asked, I don't know what to call him now. Sauron even asked Adar in episode 6, "Hey, do you remember me?" And now it's just a nice touch. It was Sauron the whole time. So, and then, we go back to Numenor in this episode. I can't remember the dude's name now because I haven't seen him in a few episodes, so I forgot his name. But the Chancellor or whatever, the king is dying, and he has a moment with Elendil's daughter, telling her he thinks he's talking to Miriel, but he's talking to someone else. It's very similar to what literally just happened in House of the Dragon with Viserys and Alicent, which is just a funny coincidence. She goes up to look at the ball or whatever, the seer stone. I don't know what to call it. I can't remember what they called it. We don't see what it ends before it reveals anything. So I guess she knows now that Numenor is doomed to be destroyed. So I guess we'll see that next season possibly. Just depends on how long they need to, or how long they want to spend in Numenor. But that's about it, Numenor wise. Miriel is blind now, um, and she has that quick scene with Elendil um, on the boat, and they arrive to Numenor. And I don't know, I guess it was kind of like the way he was looking, or just feeling the sadness of him losing his son, even though his son is definitely not dead. I found it interesting that they didn't even reveal that he was alive. I thought we were at least going to get a reveal that Isildur is alive, but maybe we're saving that till next season, I guess. So that's fine. And yeah, that's all the stuff like story wise that happened. There was no Durin this episode, which I just miss him every time. I love the dwarves in this universe. They're one of my favorite parts about Lord of the Rings, and we didn't get any dwarves. And it turns out the Balrog, the both times we saw it was just for fan service, which is fantastic. I love seeing the Balrog. It's really cool. It's like one of the coolest creature designs I think in any entertainment period. Like the Balrog is cool as hell, but that ended up meaning nothing. So yeah, whenever they go back to the dwarves and have to mine more of this mithril, I guess we'll see the Balrog then. I really enjoyed a lot of the acting in this episode, I will say. Yeah, again, this was a good episode. I liked it more than last week, but episode 6 still my favorite. You can say, "Oh, that's just cuz it was a battle." That was cuz it was a battle. Yeah, it was. It was. I'm a sucker for a good battle episode. My favorite episode of Game of Thrones is Hardhome, so I do love a good battle. And episode 6 I thought was a good battle, reminiscent of Helm's Deep. Not as good as Helm's Deep, but a good battle nonetheless. So yeah, that's really my opinion on this show. Overall, I will say pacing problems aside, some editing problems aside, I think a lot of the directing was good throughout this show. I think the writing and the story, I feel like they dragged some stuff out way too long. And oh, one thing I did love throughout this show, don't care what anybody says, the score on this show is fantastic, especially this episode. I love it is reminiscent of Howard Shore and his score from Lord of the Rings. But hey, you're doing a show based on the same thing that the Peter Jackson trilogy was. So it's okay to reference such a great score done by Howard Shore in the movies, and I think it's cool to kind of call back to that stuff and make a score. Bear McCreary did the score, and he's a fantastic composer, and he did a great job. I have no complaints with the score itself. I think the score is easily the best part of this show, and some people might go, well, that's lame if that's the best part, but no. The music is very important, and a lot of shows don't put any emphasis on composers and getting a good score for shows. Most realize that a lot of people, a lot of casual fans, and I'm not talking shit on anyone or saying that you should or should not care, but a lot of people don't care about a good score. You know, they want good action, they want good dialogue, and all that other stuff. And that stuff is very important. But for me, as a fan of music, I'm such a fan of music, I have no complaints with the score. And the score is great on this show. So yeah, that's my opinion on this. Thank you guys for watching. Like this video. Comment below. Let me know what you think of this show. Please, all I ask is that you be nice and respectful. Share this video if you like it. And please, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will be reviewing season 2, don't worry. This wasn't bad by any means. I just feel like it needs a little bit of work for me. But anyways, see you guys next video.